Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Valentino. I'm an academic counselor in the Hajim School Dean's Office, and this is the Full Spectrum Series. The Full Spectrum Series is composed of introductory lectures from our Hajim faculty. It's an opportunity to ask Hajim faculty about their program, their research, the types of engineers, the types of challenges engineers in their field work to solve. Today, we're joined by Dr. Lerner. Before we get to our program, I wanted to remind you that the Full Spectrum Series is on again next week, starting this time on Wednesday. Mechanical Engineering with Dr. John Lambropoulos. Updates will be via our Facebook page and Instagram for you. If you can't stay for the whole program, or if you see this afterwards, these videos are going to live on our Facebook, Hajim Facebook page, also on Instagram and YouTube. If you'd like the chance to win a prize, you can put your name in the chat or on the broadcast or anywhere on the Hajim Facebook page, and the potential chance to win a prize. During the lecture, I'll be monitoring both the chat and Zoom for questions, and we'll have time for questions at the end. So this session is presented by Dr. Amy Lerner. Dr. Lerner is the Associate Professor of both Biomedical Engineering and Mechanical Engineering. She's the Academic Director for the Center for Medical Technology and Innovation, CMTI, and quite frankly, is one of our most supportive faculty to our students. So Dr. Lerner, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Nick. It's my pleasure to be here and to tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about biomedical engineering. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can follow along with a few slides. Let me see, is that work for all of you? Okay, great. So I thought I would start by sharing a little bit about biomedical engineering, and I found this picture for the Full Spectrum series because I thought it shared some colorful images of biomedical optics, and this is actually an image from one of our faculty who does research in angiogenesis, or the formation of new blood vessels, and so this is using biomedical optics from all the way from red to green. So I thought I'd talk about, give you a little bit of an introduction for me and talk a little bit about what biomedical engineering is. And I'll do this by sharing a little bit about our curriculum, but also some examples of some of the research that our faculty do, that our students get involved with, and some special opportunities that you may have in doing a degree in biomedical engineering. I know that we may have students who are currently here at U of R, and also students who are thinking about biomedical engineering in the future, and I'm happy to answer questions from both and hope this is instructive for you. So by way of introduction, I always like to explain a little bit about my story when I talk to students who are considering majors. And that's because I didn't figure out biomedical engineering from the start. Biomedical engineering wasn't really a thing when I got started, or at least not very common. And I knew I was a creative person. I knew I liked to make things. But when I talked about engineering to my dad, who was an engineer, and to others, it didn't click with me. It didn't sound like what I wanted to do. But I, again, wanted to go to college, and I knew I wanted to make things and be creative. And so I majored in apparel design and textile science, believe it or not. And my first job was designing spacesuits. And on the right, you'll see a picture of me actually trying out parts of the spacesuit while I was working at a company called ILC Dover. When I was there, I realized that, hey, engineering isn't so bad. I worked alongside other engineers. I learned what engineering could be. And I realized that I wanted to do something that was called biomechanics. And that's where I learned about it. So I went on for my degree in mechanical engineering and a PhD in mechanical engineering as well. And my research has focused on computational biomechanics. And I got into that by staring at my hand and learning about my hand while I was designing spacesuit gloves. And I share this partly to let you know that, you know, this big important decision of what should I major in, it's okay if you get it wrong. You can explore and move around a little bit, just as I have over the years. I'm still doing design. I'm still doing creative things, and I'm still applying my engineering knowledge to problems that are of interest to me. And I think biomedical engineering is a great place to find those problems. In my teaching, I have taught courses related to biomechanics. I currently teach a couple of courses related to medical device design, and I also teach a quality engineering course for our graduate students. I'm the chair of the undergraduate curriculum committee as well, and so I also learn about lots of the paths of many of our students and keep in touch with lots of our alumni, and so I'll share a little bit about some of the directions that they go as well. So I'm here representing now lots of our faculty. Here's the primary pictures of the primary faculty in biomedical engineering. And we have quite a diverse group. And I bring you their photos in part to acknowledge that some of the work that I'm going to share with you today is from research from their laboratories as well. And all of these faculty are involved in teaching our undergraduates, but also in the research laboratories that many of our students participate in over the years. So what is biomedical engineering? Well, it's really a very, very interdisciplinary degree program. It applies different aspects of engineering, and that includes mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, optical engineering, chemical engineering, and aspects of computer sciences to problems in biomedical sciences. Sometimes we're just trying to understand a biomedical problem more, doing research using engineering tools, and sometimes we're actually trying to solve problems in medical applications, whether it's high-tech surgery, developing tiny little instruments. This is a picture of a pill cam that you actually swallow, and it takes pictures inside your digestive system as it goes through. Or we might design instruments like the Da Vinci robotic surgery system, and our engineers are involved in solving those robotic problems, as well as studying tissue engineering and that sort of thing. So again, what do? The engineers must be able to define the medical problem in the terms of engineering, but also find a solution that meets engineering requirements and the medical requirements. So we have to be attentive to both what the body might do to respond to a device, but also how to make that device work. So it's really interdisciplinary. We have to talk multiple languages and be able to work with a really wide range of people. It can include designing devices. It can include designing replacement tissues, organ replacements, or systems that are used to develop those. We can design instruments for monitoring and diagnosis of disease. Many of our students get involved in more biotechnology-oriented things like developing bioprocessing for drug development or biopharmaceuticals. Or if they're not designing solutions, sometimes, again, we're just using engineering tools to better understand diseases like cancer or arthritis or glaucoma. And so there's a wide range of things that you can do. And the different aspects of engineering might focus on one part of that process or another. So let me give you some examples. Many of our students get excited about the idea of designing prosthetic limbs or prosthetic orthotic devices to work with for the hand, replacement of the hand or a leg. This is an example of a 3D printed prosthetic for kids with deformities in their hands. We've also had students develop devices to monitor respiration in neonates. And so this is an example of monitoring the breathing of neonates. And so that might be a signals kind of instrumentation problem. Some of our students and faculty work on nanotechnology to develop new drugs that can do targeted drug delivery. And other students might look at optical solutions. And this is an example of a device actually that our students help to develop to look at the vocal cords as someone is speaking. So it passes through the nose, but we have a camera that actually allows you to visualize what the vocal cords do as someone is speaking or even singing. So what can you do with your degree in biomedical engineering? Again, designing, developing treatments. Many of our students, but not all, go on to become some kind of healthcare professional. Lots of our students get interested in more basic science research, working in a laboratory to develop drugs or treatments or to better understand disease. Some of our students go on to teach. And because of the diversity of the background that you learn in biomedical engineering, it can be a great background for thinking about teaching in all different kinds of directions. Some of our students go on to law school and become patent attorneys. Some of our students are very entrepreneurial and might start a company. And so there's lots of different directions that our students can go. After graduation, here's a pie chart that shows some of the examples of different directions. And again, health professions shown in orange here. People go on to become physicians, but also nursing, physical therapy, orthotics and prosthetics, or physician assistants are different paths. But you'll see it's not all of our students are pre-med. It's some of them, but certainly not all of them. We also have many students who go on for either a master's or a PhD. Often that PhD is based on their excitement that they get involved in research here at the University of Rochester, and so they get inspired to go on for a PhD. But many of our students go on directly into industry, and many of those who do a master's or a PhD also go on to industry, again, working in the device industry, working in pharmaceutical companies, working in consulting and other directions. Here's just an example of a whole lot of the different places that they've gone. On the right-hand side are examples of schools and medical schools and graduate schools that our students have gone on to. And on the left are some of the different companies that our students have gone on to. And as I said, it's always my great joy to see what our alumni do and what directions they go. And I like to keep in touch with them to learn about their paths. So the path through biomedical engineering at the University of Rochester is well structured to allow a core of courses throughout the curriculum so that all of our students travel through the curriculum together in a set of basic courses. In the first semester, freshman year, we have students participating in a course called Introduction to Biomedical Engineering. And that course is designed to give you a chance to think about what is engineering. I wished I had had that course when I was early on in my career, so I better understood what engineering was and it wasn't so scary and strange. So it's a course that introduces you to the different concentration areas that I'll tell you a little bit more about as well. Some of our students take that course and realize engineering isn't for them. Some of them take it and realize, yes, they really love the problem solving part of engineering, and it helps them decide what direction to go within biomedical engineering. And some of them find out they're really in love with one of those concentrations and then choose to major in a different part of engineering. Any of those are okay. But we like to put that introduction really early on so you have some exposure to it first thing. During the second year, you'll get an exposure to Introduction to Biomechanics, and then some signal biosystems and circuits. All of our students take those courses, so they get an exposure to those different parts of biomedical engineering. During the junior year, our students take a signals, systems and imaging course, a biomaterials course, and a course in biomedical computation. And then finally in the senior year, our students take a quantitative physiology course as well as our 2-semester senior design course that I'll tell you a little bit more about in just a minute. Oops. All of our students also start out with a series of math and basic science courses, and these are common to many of the other disciplines in engineering. So if you're thinking about exploring, many of the common courses in the first couple of years will be similar between the different engineering disciplines. Everyone takes calculus and differential equations. Those of you who are still in high school, you may be taking AP calculus. That's okay. If not, you'll get it here, and there's a variety of different paths through that. And we can talk more about that if you have questions. Everyone takes physics, chemistry, and also biology. Later on in the curriculum, you also have to take at least 2 additional science courses. But those 2 courses, those additional science courses, can be of your choosing. So that's a place where you can really tailor your particular path through biomedical engineering. We also have our students concentrate in different areas within BME. If you tried to do everything in BME, you would not get, it wouldn't be possible for you to go deep in any one area. And so we expect our students to concentrate in either cell and tissue engineering, biomedical optics, biosignals and biosystems, or biomechanics. And so in order to concentrate in each of those disciplines, our students take 3 courses that are focused in one of the traditional engineering disciplines. So for example, in cell and tissue engineering, the students take 3 courses in chemical engineering. And then they also take 1 BME course that applies the engineering directly to medical problems. For example, there's a bioprocess course, or there's a cell and tissue engineering course. We also have students can concentrate in biomedical optics, where their courses would be in optics, the 3 of the courses in optics, and then a medically based optics course later on. Biomechanics is targeted in mechanical engineering, and Biosignals and Biosystems targets more electrical and computer engineering. And we even allow students to do a custom concentration. If there's a special area that they're interested in that kind of overlaps between these, we will allow students to consider combinations of these, and those are by petition. So there's lots of ways to kind of tailor the experience for your own interests. I thought I'd talk a little bit more about some of these concentrations in order to give you a little bit of flavor for what kinds of things biomedical engineers do. And to do this, I'm going to mention some of the research that our faculty do in biomedical engineering here at the University of Rochester. So in cell and tissue engineering, we have faculty who are designing tendon wound healing and tendon tissue engineering, where they're trying to understand better how tendons heal and how we might create replacement tendons for connecting muscles to bones. We have faculty who are working on little microbubble arrays that allow them to sort cancer cells and better understand them and potentially develop new treatments or methods of clarifying whether those treatments are successful. We have faculty developing targeted drug delivery in a variety of different spaces, including looking at the development of biofilms in dental spaces, in the salivary glands, for leukemia, and for osteoporosis. There's a variety of biomolecular sensing studies that are kind of a crossover between cell and tissue engineering and optical engineering. And we even have people who are looking at developing smart bandages as part of their cell and tissue engineering research. In biomedical optics, there's all kinds of things related to vision research, related to studying cancer therapies or using contrast agents to better understand cancer. People are looking at laser and tissue interactions in clinical devices and a variety of different ways of making microscopy systems more effective and user-friendly for clinical applications. And also ways of doing imaging during surgery to make it faster to get, for example, cancer diagnosis during the procedures of surgery. In biomechanics, we range all the way from little tiny nanomechanics and nanomembranes, all the way to looking at whole joints like the knee and computational modeling of the knee. And everything in between. And so there's all different ranges and types of engineering, whether it's experimental mechanics or computational mechanics. And so there's all kinds of different aspects of biomechanics that our faculty and students investigate. And then the last area in biosignals and biosystems, this crosses over a great deal with neuroengineering. We have lots of faculty who are doing research in hearing or vestibular control. People looking at brain control of prosthetics, and also various different kinds of medical imaging, including ultrasound imaging. And so there's lots of different aspects of the signals and systems, again, kind of crossing over with electrical and computer engineering in many cases. Some of them now getting into virtual reality and augmented reality as well. So that's what our faculty are doing. And you may say, well, great, how do I get involved? Well, in fact, many of our undergraduates participate in research projects in one way or another. The last count we had, something like 90% of our students had some kind of research project experience, whether it was through a summer job, through an independent study during the academic year. It might be here at Rochester, it might be away somewhere else over the summer. So there's lots of different ways to get that kind of experience. Plus, our faculty like nothing more than to bring their research into the classroom. And so many of our projects, or many of our courses, involve term projects or final projects that involve research questions that come straight from their laboratory. And so we encourage you to get involved. Maybe not your very first semester, but often the second semester or the summer after your first year. There's lots of time to get involved in research, and most of our students do that. The next thing I'll talk about, again, by way of giving you some examples about what senior design or what biomedical engineering can be, is to talk about our senior design program. And so our senior design experience is a 2-semester project course that is hands-on and involves real-world projects that are brought to us by customers that we identify from the medical center, which is just a few steps away, or from companies or from members of the community. Along the way, our students are expected to build prototypes and to test them, and to think about the business applications of that kind of prototype. They're all team-based. The students work in teams for these projects, and again, have to learn about the FDA, learn about patent law, and learn about what might be the next steps for manufacturing such a product. This particular student is working on a pill dispenser, an organizing system to help people manage their medications. It was a really fun project. Here's another example of a group of students. They were actually working on an optical system to help detect diabetes in a global health situation. So sometimes our students are working with a customer from across the world, trying to develop systems that work better to diagnose disease. This is a team that was working on a device that allowed people who had learned how to read Braille earlier in life, but were starting to lose the sensory tactile sensation in their fingers, often due to diabetes, for example. And so reading in Braille was no longer practical for them. And so they developed a kind of optical system that would read existing Braille documents that they had, kind of like scanning them in, and then it would convert them to audible text. So they could read documents, Braille documents that they had, even though they had lost the ability to read them by hand. And this is another group of students working on a global health project. In this case, they're working on a pot skirt to make cooking on a cook stove more efficient. This one was a really fun project because it came to us from one of our alumni who had started a company developing cook stoves, and the cook stoves are manufactured in Kenya. And he wanted to refine the cook stove by adding a pot skirt that would make it more efficient and require the people who use it to spend less of their time collecting firewood or wasting fuel for that cook stove. And so it's always fun to do these projects working with our alumni who've gone on to identify real problems in the real world. Here's a project that we did for some physical therapists from the local community, and it's being tried out by one of our faculty and his 2 adorable kids. And this was for a walker for kids who had early mobility challenges. They might need to use a walker. Most walkers aren't really designed for toddlers, and this was one that was designed to help kids learn to walk, but be somewhat supported as they walk around. And so another nice example of students working as a team to develop physical prototypes that solve real-world problems. Throughout that course, there's lots of opportunities for our students to develop their teamwork skills, and lots of presentations and communication, poster projects and things like that, where they develop all kinds of skills that are valuable in industry on top of the prototyping experiences that they get. Some of you may wonder about master's degree options. Can I do a combination bachelor's and master's? Well, there's 3 different master's degree options here at Rochester. You don't have to do a master's degree, but if you want to do a little bit more focused on research, you can do a master's that's thesis based, and that takes a couple of years after graduating. We have a medical device master's program that is a one-year program that allows students to observe in the operating rooms and learn more about the needs that our clinicians, especially surgeons, might have, and to develop devices that would solve those problems. And then we have an option that allows students just to take more specialized coursework that takes about 1 year after graduation. So it is possible to get a bachelor's and a master's in 5 years. In many cases, you can apply to the programs as a junior or as a senior. And we don't typically require the graduate record exam for our University of Rochester students. So often students can get started on research or courses early and transition into the master's program quite easily. So if that's something that you have on your radar, it's certainly possible to do with our programs for sure. We also, as I mentioned, have students who go on for pre-med or for medical school. We don't have a formal pre-med major at the University of Rochester, but biomedical engineering is a great place to do it. Still, many of our students who are interested can fit in all of their pre-med requirements within the BME major. By choosing the electives that they take carefully, they can get that done pretty easily. That said, many of our students, not just in biomedical engineering, but in many different majors, also will choose to take kind of a gap year that can give them a little more flexibility in planning that pre-med experience. Our students, graduates, have gone on to be physicians of all different types, anesthesiology, I'm looking at these folks here, obstetrics and gynecology, cardiovascular surgeons, all different aspects of medicine. But also, in addition to pre-med, we've had students go on for physical therapy, orthotics and prosthetics, and physician assistants and so forth. So there's lots of different ways, and our folks at the Green Career Center can really help in navigating this pre-health professions option. Some people think that biomedical engineering is so packed that there's not room for study abroad, but in fact, we do encourage our students to do study abroad, and something like 10 to 20% of our students do go. We'd actually like it to be more, so we'll work with you to identify paths to make that happen. Our students often do it sophomore or junior year is the most common times to do it. And it does take planning, but it's certainly possible to do. And here's some examples of some of the different places that students have gone. But it's actually really fun to help students find new places to go. So we encourage you to think about it and see what might work for you. For those of you not sure about biomedical engineering, I'll also point out that we have options for a minor in biomedical engineering. For those of you who might be thinking about a different engineering discipline, this is really relatively straightforward to do. You have to fulfill basic math requirements, also take some biological sciences, and BME 101, as well as 2 other BME courses and another engineering course. And so this is a great thing to do if you're maybe you're thinking about, I want to do biology, but a little bit of BME, or I really am mainly interested in mechanical engineering, but I want a minor in biomedical engineering. It's a straightforward to do this kind of overlap in biomedical engineering. We even have developed 4 different clusters in biomedical engineering that are suitable for students who are not BME majors. So if you're thinking about trying out BME, but not necessarily majoring in it, these are some options for you to consider as well. I thought I'd mention a little bit about what the first semester in BME looks like. And that is, as I mentioned, we have our Introduction to Biomedical Engineering course. We have a math course, but that's variable depending on where you're coming in to math. There's different options for where you start the calculus sequence, and that's fine. Most of our students take chemistry, and most of our students take either writing or a humanities or social science elective. But there's lots of variations in this. For those of you who may be already here at U of R and thinking about switching into biomedical engineering, It's worth mentioning that some of the other engineering courses, the other introduction to engineering courses might be a suitable alternate to the BME 101 course if you'd like to do that. Or another option is to do biomedical engineering, or sorry, biology early, and then take BME 101 later in the sophomore year. We don't encourage students to take BME 101 later than the sophomore year. But if you join us late, you can also substitute another upper level BME course for that BME 101 and still kind of stay on schedule. So there's a variety of different ways to transfer into our BME program, whether you're transferring in from outside of U of R or from another major here within Rochester. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions that you have. Nick, maybe you've gotten some.
Yes, we had a few questions that were submitted before, so I wanted to start with that.
Okay.
You know, as a professor and advisor, can you ballpark, this part is my question, can you ballpark how many times you've had the MD versus like MS or PhD in BME questions? So how many people who start off, they're biomedical engineering, but they're also doing their pre-med requirements. Can you talk about like, when does this conversation have you had with students? What does it look like? What are like parental reactions that you know of or anything like that about the decision between going for the medical doctor route versus BME master's PhD?
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, you know, as you saw, not many people think that BME is the pre-med major and everyone in BME is going to be pre-med, and that's not true. A lot of people come in thinking they might want to do pre-med. BME 101 is designed in part to help you understand what being an engineer is like. You know, what is problem solving like an engineer? What is the quantitative piece of problem solving like? And comparing that, for example, to a biology course or the straight science courses, that's a little bit different, the way that the engineers and scientists approach problems. And so we like people to start thinking about what it's like to be an engineer versus a scientist. The experiences in the research laboratories help people see what's the difference between being a scientist and an engineer along the way. So there's lots of different ways to kind of try on the different things. Many of our students also participate in volunteer work over at the medical center that allows them to think about, you know, what's it like in the clinical space? Do I like working with patients or do I like working on problems? How much do I enjoy the quantitative, creative, physical, prototyping kinds of things? And so all of those things happen over the course of the 4 years here. And to be honest, that decision for pre-med versus not pre-med sometimes happens senior year. Like some people decide as first-year students and they just barrel on and they're headed in the right direction and it never changes. But often people aren't sure until later. That gap year can really facilitate that sort of, oh geez, I wasn't sure I was going to do pre-med. I didn't take the MCATs. Now I'm going to take the MCATs and actually decide. We've had students go on for a master's degree and then do pre-med. We've had students do the PhD and then do pre-med, so do med school. So it happens that people choose medicine later and later. And we are reminded that the typical age of starting medical school is something like 25. So it is not uncommon for people to start medical school a little bit later after they've kind of figured it out and figured out life a little bit. So I think that it really, we try to bake into the curriculum experiences that will allow you to try it on a little bit and see what you like and what you don't like. And we encourage students, and the Green Center as well would encourage you to do some experiences, volunteer experiences, research experiences, design experiences. And we want you to think about what fits you the best and what's the best path, talking with clinicians and so forth. We have students, for example, in our master's degree program who come in thinking it's just going to be a gap year before they go to med school. And they realize that, no, actually, I really love designing things. I want to solve things. I want to work with doctors on important problems, but I actually want to be the one designing things. I don't want to be the doctor. I've seen how hard that doctor's life is, or I've seen that they actually don't have time to make stuff. They're busy. It's a different kind of life, and so they change their mind. But we've also seen people go the other way, where they're coming to our program thinking they're just going to be the engineer doing the design, working at some company, and then they see the doctor's life and they see the opportunity to work with patients, and they say, no, that's the piece I want. So I encourage people not to decide right away, to put it off a little bit, to try some things out. And as you saw from my introduction, I wasn't right in the beginning, and it's okay. You got plenty of time to make that kind of decision.
Great. We had a question that was submitted by a current student. Besides doing a minor in BME, are there other ways that other engineering majors can get a taste of the BME side of engineering?
So, well, even without doing a minor, there's a variety of our courses that might be a good taste for it. Some of our courses are actually cross-listed with the other department. If you're in engineering, as long as you check the prerequisites, there are a number of our courses that are cross-listed with chemical engineering or mechanical engineering. Some of the earlier courses are still accessible to students in biology. And so I think just taking a handful of courses is one way to do it. Getting involved in a research lab is another way. Many of our faculty have students from working in the laboratories from other disciplines, and we welcome that. I often have mechanical engineering students in my laboratory. I think coming to our seminar series is another way. We have actually a really nice alumni series that's been going on lately. And that might be a way to get to know what's going on in engineering. And we also have a student organization, the Biomedical Engineering Society, that holds events related to biomedical engineering, whether they're seminars or outreach activities or things like that.
Great. One of the questions we had is very broad, I guess, so I will make a change to it. But questions like, what does my life look like as a biomedical engineer? And one of the things that we explain in advising to students, is, I'm sure you do, is engineer is problem solving, right?
Yep.
So I guess, what does problem solving look like when you graduate from here? Like, are you in the lab doing this? Are you, like, how much is done independently? I think a lot of people can't visualize it other than thinking about just the like the either instrumentation or the prosthetics.
Yeah, well, it's a broad question, and there's lots of variety to that. I think we just had an alum yesterday who came in to Stephanie Kamau, you may remember, who is now working in the operating room. So she goes in and actually helps to solve problems directly with MDs. So she didn't want to be a doctor, but she is working in the operating room and the cardiac cath lab, helping to use the instruments in the operating room. And so she's the one who's kind of debugging and problem solving how to treat a particular patient. She can't do it herself, but she's there every day with the surgeons or clinicians, I guess, doing kinds of procedures. So sometimes it's that way. We have others who are developing instruments at a company. They might be using CAD or modeling to develop, complicated instruments and making sure they all fit together. They might be using doing software development to program a pacemaker or to program a hearing aid, that kind of problem solving. They might be working in a laboratory where they're doing sort of like your chemistry experiment where you're developing. I always enjoy talking to students who design molecules the way I design big gadgets and use hammers and nails and things like that. And they're doing it with little molecules and they're figuring out how the molecules fit together. But they're working in a laboratory, sometimes at the bench, sometimes working with others in that way. So there's really all different kinds of things that people can do. And then there's others who are doing more consulting, where the problems that they're solving is developing, they're not touching anything. They're thinking about, how do we pull the research from here and the research from there to do the math on whether this is an important problem for the future, or whether a company should invest their time in solving a particular problem. But they're digging into the science and helping the business people understand the technological background of a problem. So there's really all different kinds of ways that that people can work. And I think that, again, one of the things that we try and provide over the curriculum is ways to try on different pieces of that. Do you like the hands-on part of it? Do you like the computational part of it? What would you like to spend, the most time on? And of course, the other thing that's helpful in that way is a summer research experience, summer industry experience, shadowing opportunities, talking to our alumni, a day in the life, and thinking about those. And there's lots of opportunities to do that.
I know you've been to commencements and heard Ed's speech, Ed Hajim's speech. One of the things he talks about that really resonates with me is the idea is he doesn't base his whole success on his education or his hard work or whatever. He says, he also caught his wave, but he was looking for it. Do you think that COVID is going to put BME in a position to be a next big wave of BME? Or is this, are people joining this? Do you think it's right place at right time?
Yeah, well, I often have said, I think COVID would have been fascinating if it weren't so annoying, right? So we had so many interesting opportunities to learn about a huge number of problems that came along, and many of our students were at the forefront, right? We have students who are doing vaccine development. We had students who are developing respirators. I saw some of our alumni pivot from one job to start a company developing new masks. We are, we have a number of students, current students, who are really excited now about public health, and are going to pivot from, it's not really a change from BME, it's a different aspect of BME. So they're really excited about the opportunities that are there. It was often very comforting for me to know that our alumni were out there solving big problems. I think, this is a wave. I think BMEs have been well positioned in the last year to solve a huge range of problems. And I fear we have no shortage of problems left. So, yeah.
I remember our graduate student was Nancy Bonsbach was in the CMTI program during this, and the pivot immediately towards making masks was amazing, and something that she said had changed her whole trajectory on what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've been asking the instructors and the professors for the full spectrum series is to talk about failure. Like, what our income prospective students and even our current students, a lot of the times feel like they can't have any weaknesses, and then they come to college and find out that they do, and they can, and that's okay. But can you talk about what failure looks like in research in BME, and sort of what are the steps and measures to overcome that failure?
Well, I think failure is how we learn things, right? So usually failures are really, more just, as long as we learn from them, then they're not a failure. They're just adding to our expertise. So we learned what didn't work, and we figure out a way to capture that and document it and not do it that way the second time, right? So I think failure in research comes from not trying, I think. So, right, I think it isn't failure if unless we're not trying, then it's failure, I guess. So certainly there are things that don't work along the way often. Certainly there are things that someone else scoops us and does it first. But as you know, as long as you're staying, you learn to pay more attention and stay aware of what's going on by others. Again, I think it's just an opportunity to learn and push yourself harder the next time. And make sure, it's funny, I get into conversations in our senior design community across the country, how to teach about design. And sometimes we argue whether or not a student team can get an A if their project doesn't work. And there are some schools who say you can't, nope, doesn't work, you can't get an A, it's not possible. And I feel very differently, because as long as the student's project, as long as they understand why it didn't work and what didn't work about it, and can document what they learned because it didn't work and what they'll do differently the next time, then it can be an A+, So I think that's as valuable a learning experience as a successful prototype that worked the first time.
We have something, I think, similar when I worked with the McNair students on their summer research. The best comparison using is, okay, you're in a movie, but you need to know what scene you're in. How much has been filmed? Do you have a speaking role? Like what is going to be done? Because your time, you're not going to be there for the duration of the research, but you have to understand what has been up to this point and then what is coming forward. And I think that that sort of experience and knowing they don't have to see it from start to finish is uncommon, I'll say, for a lot of students who have such shortened experiences in high school.
Yeah.
One of the last question that we have, I guess it's more of, most of the students that be watching this are either prospective or their first year students. I know we'll have some parents watching this too. What advice do you have for prospective students to prepare themselves to try to figure out what they're interested in within BME? And what do you want for first semester, first year students to do when they've decided they want to change their mind and go towards BME?
So I think talking to people, so if you're here, jump into BME 101. Don't be afraid to, reach out to Professor Brown as our instructor for 101. Kanika Vatz helps with the laboratory as well. And Dr. Brown and Dr. Vatz love to share with students not only, what's the homework for today or what's the lecture material for today, but what's new in biomedical engineering, who else should I talk to about their research. I would say students often want to jump in and get involved in research right away or get involved in too many different things right away. And I would say, explore a lot of different things, try to get to know what's going on. Actually look at our web pages after you get here. Often our prospective students look, and then once they're here, they stop looking. But look again and try to meet graduate students who are doing work, trying to meet some of the other undergraduates who are doing work in the laboratories, for example. Find out what's going on in senior design. And just learn as much as you can about what's happening in the program. The day-to-day, coursework can not be as exciting as what's next, right? And so try not to get mired down by what's happening in this week's assignment, but what it's preparing you for. And so finding out more about what it's preparing you for is helpful and can be really motivating. We also think that in BME, we feel pretty strongly that it's a team activity. Like, we want you to work as teams. So if you find yourself here, and if you in high school, you were used to working all by yourself and that worked great, it might work here, but it's not really what the faculty are expecting. Our faculty are expecting that you're actually working together. Thinking about different approaches to solving problems, sharing ideas, not copying from each other, but sharing the process together. And if you're having trouble finding that, then you need to talk to the faculty as well. And I think that process of working in a team also exposes you to other people's network for what else is going on in the department. I would also say that find a way to talk to our alumni. So get involved in the Meliora Collective, go to the Career Center. If there's ever an alumni talk, go. Listen to it, ask questions at the talks, find out more there, because what's the day in the life? You don't want to know what my faculty life is like. That's not really the thing, right? You don't want to talk to me only. You want to talk to our alumni, and our faculty can actually help you with that quite a bit. So with connecting to alumni, and I think we enjoy sharing. Our alumni love giving back. And so I think connecting to them can be really valuable as well.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that is all the time that we have for today. Dr. Lerner, thank you so much for taking time. I know you have a lot to do,
Yeah.
but the ability for students to look at this at their own pace, especially with the videos after we post them, have been able to answer a lot of questions for both prospective students and hopefully drive questions towards us, the advisors. But so thank you again for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, I'm very happy to. And I did share my contact information, so scroll back if you need to, but I'm happy to take email. And Timmy Marple, whose name I don't think I mentioned, but is our undergraduate coordinator, is also a great contact. And so reach out to her. And again, we'd be happy to connect you with others who might be able to answer your questions too. So,
excellent, excellent. We will be back on Wednesday again with mechanical engineering with Dr. John Lambropoulos from 1 to 2 p.m. There'll be information on that on the Facebook page. Thank you all for joining us, and we'd like you to make sure that you have a great weekend, and we will see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.